Hello, coaches. Today we have a special episode for you. It's not quite Coach Better, but I have been given permission to share here. I was recently interviewed for Kristen Moreland's show On the Balcony, which is shared privately among the South American international schools. And as I mentioned, I got permission to share it here with all of you. Kristen is an instructional coach at the Pan American School in Brazil, and she has a great series of questions that we dig into during this conversation. We chat about the important characteristics for coaches during remote learning, and what coaching means to us. Kristen will also be on the Coach Better podcast as a guest in season 3, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for that episode.
Joining me on the balcony this month is founder and CEO of Eduro Learning, Kim Cofino. Kim is a 20-year veteran of international schools, and she's a premier mentor for Eduro Learning, the Coach Micro-Credential program. Kim founded Eduro Learning because she is driven by a mission that speaks to all of us, the relentless pursuit of better professional learning. Her latest adventure has been the project Women Who Lead, a course born from the stories and experiences of over 70 successful women leading international schools, some of whom are in our very own region. Kim, it is such a joy to be speaking with you today. So I'd love to know, with all of your coaching experience, what metaphor would you use to describe our craft?
First, I have to say thank you so much for having me on this conversation and for introducing me so glowingly. I don't think I can live up to the standards you've set in that beautiful intro. So I was actually thinking about this question. This is the question that's been rolling around in my mind since I saw your last episode. And I don't think I have like a perfect metaphor, but I've been having a number of conversations with coaches in the Coach Micro-Credential and with my private mentoring clients. And they talk about feeling like their goals are very fractured and like all over the place, and they don't see how they come together. And so for me, I feel like that's what coaching is. It's like seeing this big picture and understanding how all these pieces are actually stemming from a seed that will grow into this beautiful, realized coach over time as we're working together. And so I know that grow is a really kind of standard metaphor, but I like this concept of all of our different skills and goals that we're working towards are branches of the same tree.
Nice. And that you can't see the finished product just yet, right?
Yes, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think coaches do a really excellent job in general of helping people. It maybe is in their own coaching, they need more of that support to see that big picture, but helping other people see the big picture and encouraging them to keep going, even when I don't know what this is going to be, but keep working.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you think is the most important characteristic of a coach?
I have so many thoughts that are running through my mind when I hear you ask that question, but the thing that I'm thinking about is resilience and adaptability. And I kind of am thinking about it in two different ways. One way in terms of being able to support all of the teachers that you work with, you need to be able to adapt and be flexible and consider what their needs are over potentially what you think their needs should be, and react to what they're actually telling you, what you're actually seeing in the classroom, as opposed to your own perception of what's happening. And then resilience, like kind of on the other side of that same coin, is if things don't go the way you think they might have gone, to be able to come back, try something different, and recognize that there's an alternate strategy or an alternate idea or an alternate approach that you can take with that individual. Because if you're really coaching the individuals in your school community, you're personalizing the learning for that person. And you need to listen and hear what they need. And then you need to adapt and continue to try new strategies that are going to help that individual person. I think over time, you might see, like in a classroom, that concept of differentiation is groups of students. You can see your coachees or the teachers you work with a little bit as groups. But if you're starting out with that kind of personalized professional learning, that personalized coaching, you're being really adaptable, flexible, and resilient to each individual's needs.
Absolutely. No two coaching conversations, cycles should look the same, right?
Right.
How do you help coaches that you work with kind of move out of that mentality? I spoke with Jennifer Abrams about this last month. That idea of not coming in to fix somebody, or that, as you just said, but this is what I think it should be, but this is what is the reality for the person that I'm working with. How do you help coaches maybe who are struggling a little bit when they see something that they think should be the focus versus making that more of the teacher-centered? What are some ways that you help coaches realize that?
That is such a hard thing, right? Because you, as the coach, you might have this ultimate vision of where things should be going, and you have this passion for learning to look a certain way. And when a teacher might not be ready for that thing, to be able to hear and listen to what they're actually saying can be really hard. So I've had a number of conversations actually recently, quite close to this dynamic that you're talking about right now. And the question I always ask is, well, what did they say? What did you hear them say? What tone of voice were they using? What expression did they have? What questions did they ask? What did you actually hear? Not what you think, not what you perceived. What did you actually hear? And let's look at that data the same exact way we would look at student data with teachers. Let's look at your coaching data with the teacher and identify where do they really want to go? What are they really saying to you, as opposed to what do you perceive they're saying and what do you wish they were saying?
Such a powerful practice. I actually just did this yesterday, and especially now when in hybrid modes or virtual learning, so many of us have just all of the recordings just sitting there.
Yes.
Whereas I remember before having to, hey, would it be okay if we recorded a coaching session? And now it's like, we've got the video already. And so being able to script, being able to point out, like, look at the teacher's facial expressions here, those beamers for our cognitive coaching of the matters, right? Like, there's some quality thinking going on here. This is the shift, this moment. Let's go back, watch this moment. Your question did that. And being able to use that third point, use that data, just to be, instead of getting caught in our own heads on, oh, I don't know if that went well. I don't know if anything happened. Here it is. Let's go back. Or scripting the questions you ask, and then being able to really focus on those responses. Again, not what you think someone had said or what you wanted them to say. Oh, yes. Powerful, powerful practice. So speaking of hybrid and virtual learning, what advice or suggestions do you have right now for coaches who are experiencing some difficulties, right? And for coaches who may have gone through certain trainings or have, this is how coaching has always been, and it doesn't look that way now. Any advice or suggestions as coaches navigate that?
I almost kind of think a little bit comes back to that question you asked about the characteristic about being flexible and seeing what the teacher's needs are. I had a really great conversation today with some coaches who have transitioned back to the classroom, and they were saying how grateful they were to be in the classroom this year, because now they can really see just how challenging this whole year has been. And not to get, I will say, I know I have been guilty of this. Like, when you don't have classes that you're teaching, it's easy to forget all of those other pieces that make classroom teaching so complex. And so I think being a good listener and being really responsive to what teachers needs as opposed to what you wish they needed is probably the advice that I would have now. And then I also think if there's any opportunity to lift the burden, whatever the burden might be, whether you're taking a class or you're taking a small group or you're providing the resource or you're making the resource or whatever it might be, like, really hear what teachers need and then try to do that thing instead of the thing you always did, because that just might not work right now, even though those are things we should always do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think if you're not following a specific model right now, that's okay. Right?
Yes.
Right now,
yes,
we need to make sure that our teachers are supported in all of the ways. Right.
Yes.
And helping clear that path, right? What can I do to make your life easier right now? What do you need? And sometimes it is just, I just need to talk through all of these things to let them settle. I've been asking teachers a lot. A go-to question for me has been, but what do you know? What in your teacher heart has worked before? You've been here. It may not be, the pandemic and virtual teaching and all of these things, but you're teaching, your kids. Focus there. What do you know? What can you hold on to and grow from there? Because there's just been using the word nonsense a lot lately. There's so many other things.
A lot.
But Yeah.
That actually connects to me to like a small little side story that in the Coach micro-credential, I work with coaches around the world. And one of our last like global cohort conversations, we talked about teachers not having the capacity for a coaching cycle right now. And how do I handle that? Because I'm learning how to do a coaching cycle properly. I want to do it properly. I want to do it like it's in this course, but teachers are not ready to do that. And we decided as a team to coin this phrase, which I will do a 5-minute Friday video about soon, called Covert Coaching. And the idea is, yes, you're still coaching this person, but you're not talking about the pre-observation meeting. You're not talking about, I'm going to come in and do a classroom data. You're just kind of having a conversation with them and seeing where that conversation goes without putting labels on it, without making it a big deal. And I think that's a really simple thing that coaches can do now in like the hybrid virtual world, is like just make coaching simplified. Even if it feels like you're stepping out of the normal way that you do your coaching practice, not putting a label on something, not, sending a calendar invite, but instead dropping by or text messaging or, whatever it is to make it easier for that person, that covert coaching.
I love that. And I think that's the most powerful kind of coaching you can do sometimes, because you're right. That calendar invite just in and of itself adds a little, not anxiety necessarily, but it feels like one more thing, right?
Yep.
If you're not in the place where you're looking forward to it, or you have your list of all the things you want to talk about with your coach, it can definitely change the mindset for sure.
Yes.
And Jim Knight talks about the partnership, right? And we can be partners in that way just by checking in, by sending an email, send an emoji with, hey, just wanted to send a little love your way, right? And you're just something to let them know they're not alone and it's okay. And there's always going to be data to look at later, right?
Yep.
Yep. So good. Well, you mentioned the coach and the micro-credential program. Tell us about what you're working on these days. What's going on in your world? You've got so much stuff, and I will put the links to your social media and your website. All of that will go in the newsletter, but tell us what you're working on.
So I did just finish, this is kind of the end of a project, interviewing over 70 successful women leaders in education settings around the world. And that created our certificate program called Women Who Lead, which actually was inspired by another program I run called The Coach. And The Coach is an academic year-long online program with mentorship that helps coaches become better coaches. That is not just for coaches, it's also for school leaders and classroom teachers, anyone who wants to have better coaching conversations. And that spun out of another program called COTAIL, the Certificate of Educational Technology and Information Literacy, which is for educators who want to really transform learning in their classroom through the use of technology. So ultimately, I have 3 big programs that I work on kind of all the time, which is COTAIL, The Coach, and Women Who Lead. And I can tell you a little bit about Women Who Lead because I know you were specifically curious about that. So during the Coach micro-credential, in the last year's cohort, and also as part of the COHBETTER podcast that I host, I happened to have like a series of conversations with women where they were articulating, not quite in these words, but this same kind of sentiment of feeling imposter syndrome and feeling double standards for women as compared to men, and feeling like they didn't see the representation of themselves in senior leadership positions in schools. They couldn't really relate to where they might be going in their coaching journey. I think a lot of people in coaching positions, particularly in international schools, wield a lot of influential leadership, but they don't have positional power. And so it's this weird feeling of being in between. I'm not really a leader, I'm not an administrator, but I have a lot of influence. And how do I make sense of all those skills that I'm learning as a coach and applying them to kind of level up my leadership skills and maybe move that into more formal leadership? So all of those kind of disconnected conversations led me to think, well, let me see if I can chat with a few successful leaders and see what kind of emerges. And when I started that project, which was around January 2020, like right before the pandemic, I thought to myself, oh, maybe I'll talk to 10 leaders. And it just kind of escalated because at the end of every call, I asked them, who else should I talk to? And I would always get a name or 2 names or 3 names. And so by the end of maybe June 2020, I had spoken to 70 successful women leaders in public and private schools around the world, international and state schools. And it just felt like I needed to take a pause there and build out a program. So that program is designed for leaders at any level aspiring to the next level of leadership, to give you a window into the personal journeys of women who lead. And what I think is kind of cool about the program is that each topic, like we talk about the unique challenges women face, or handling challenging conversations, or essential skills for female leaders, each topic that we discuss, you get a curated list of resources, you get some context from me and a little intro video from me, and then you also get curated conversations from every single one of the women that I interviewed, threaded into a playlist of head of school interviews, curriculum or K-12 director interviews, principal interviews, and then consultants or influential leader interviews. So if you're a person who's right now saying, look, I'm a principal and I need to figure out the next step to be a head of school, you're going to go in there and you're going to see 23 answers to the same question for every single module. Or maybe you're a coach and you're like, my next step is to become a curriculum director or a principal. You're going to go in there and see, I think I have 24 curriculum directors, 24 principals and 20 curriculum directors. And you can just follow those threads all the way through and decide, oh, I really want to learn from Clarissa Sasons, for example, elementary principal at International School Beijing. I'm going to follow all of her conversations through. Or I want to listen to every head of school response to every question because that's what I really want insight into.
Wow. I mean, that just, I was just sitting here just getting so inspired, right? That we all know leadership can be so lonely, right? And
yes.
As has come out of your interviews, or the reason this was started, women in leadership is probably even more lonely in just because of whatever historical systems in existence from before, right? And it's just such a powerful place to curate all of these ideas, for other people to recognize you're not alone. Other people have had the same thoughts, these same ideas, and this is how they move forward. And sometimes you don't know which voice is going to speak to you. And so having these multiple choose your own adventure kind of paths, it's so inspiring. And you also spoke recently about how coaches are leaders as well. Do you want to just share a little bit more of your thoughts on that?
Sure. So that was maybe the part that made me feel, I don't know, empowered or good about the work that I have done as a coach, and feel like, oh, I really am building all these great skills. And it kind of crystallized for me in these conversations that the work that we do as coaches is leadership work. It may not be with positional authority, but it is leadership work. We need to build trust with our colleagues and build relationships with our colleagues so they're willing to be vulnerable with us. They're willing to take a chance. They're willing to try something new. That's what leaders have to do when they come into an organization. We need to occasionally have difficult conversations with our coachees when we're talking about moving from coaching light to coaching heavy, like Joelle and Killian so eloquently describes in so many different places. That can feel like it's a difficult conversation. I don't necessarily like the phrase difficult conversation, but generally speaking, that can feel like a conversation that you need to plan for and be prepared for. Mm-hmm. And that's something that leaders need to do. I think we may be learning, and I have a 5-Minute Friday, if anyone is interested, I have a 5-Minute Friday video on our Eduro Learning YouTube channel that is the ways that coaching is leadership. And I listed 10 of the ones that were most interesting to me. I think as coaches, we're building so much leadership capacity for ourselves that we may not even recognize because it's just necessary to do our job. We don't even make the connection that it is leadership because we couldn't be successful coaches without having these skills. And then when you see it reframed as leadership skills, I think that's something as coaches, maybe educators in general, owning your own leadership and feeling brave enough to step into the fact that, yes, I do have a lot of these skills. Yes, I can do this thing. Yes, I do have the capacity for this. That's a big challenge. And it feels sometimes really insurmountable because there are so few leadership positions in schools. There's a really high power distance index. So recognizing that your actual job is preparing you to do that kind of next level thing, maybe with some additional learning, I think that made me feel really good as a coach personally.
Yes to all of the things. And I think that that's a pretty common characteristic of coaches, is that we don't recognize the stuff that we're doing. We're so busy helping others.
Just doing it.
Yes. Or helping others step into their own greatness and helping them take that next step, that we don't realize that impact that we have sometimes.
Yes.
So I will be sure to post the link to that 5-Minute Friday so everyone else can get it and get that validation and feel even more empowered for the work.
Yes.
So Kim, thank you so much for being with me this morning on the balcony. It has truly been a pleasure, and hope to see some greater partnerships and some more connections between Asia and South America, and just really growing our network of global coaches. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay,
if this is a topic you want to dig deeper into and you're ready to explore in your own professional learning, please head over to edurolearning.com to see all of the great professional learning opportunities we have for you. You'll find registration dates for our next cohorts of COTAIL, The Coach, and Women Who Lead, and we only run each of those programs once a year, so you want to make sure you know when registration opens. If you're interested in any of those programs, make sure you click on the I'm Interested link so that you can get updates and be the first to know when registration opens. Also at Eduro Learning, we've got self-paced courses if you need to earn clock hour credits for recertification, and we've got downloadable workbooks to help take you through all different aspects of professional learning for you as an individual or working with the team or at the whole school-wide level. If there's anything you are looking out for or any questions you have, please reach out to us on social media. We love hearing from you, and join our Facebook group, Coach Better. See you next time.